NBS Frontline.
Finally, the much-anticipated electoral reforms have been submitted to Cabinet and are more expected to be presented for discussion in Parliament sooner rather than later.
We want to go electronic compulsorily. We have already tabled it in Cabinet. It has faced some delays, but we are going to get it done.
Key among the proposed reforms is the introduction of the smart technology for both voting and vote counting at polling stations, as advocated by the President.
The mistake was in the law. The law must be amended. The law must provide that if the machine doesn't work, you suspend the elections. Forget.
Other proposals include tighter controls on election spending and penalties for government officials who engage in electoral malpractice. These proposed changes are aimed at enhancing transparency and fairness in Uganda's electoral process that has often been marred by violence. The reforms come at a time when many Ugandans had begun to lose hope that they could come in time due to the government's perceived delay to act.
And the electoral laws and other administrative laws, the way they are. But you have people of good faith. You will have meaningful elections, even the transfer of power will happen.
One of the important things is that we must look at is whether we still have enough time.
And we'll be doing elections in 2026. That is the first ground for suspicion on the reforms.
But are the proposed electoral reforms satisfactory to all stakeholders, or are they a one-sided that will benefit only a single player? And in a first ever, a sitting president claims he was cheated of 1 million votes, a revelation that has left opposition reeling and raising concerns about the integrity of the electoral process itself.
Noop cheated by 1 million votes. I have the facts. Noop can take me to court.
I am challenging General Museveni to submit himself to an international audit.
With Uganda preparing for an election clouded by uncertainty, the timing of these reforms could signal a pivotal moment. Are Mao's reforms a turning point for Uganda's democracy? This is The Frontline.
NBS Frontline.
A very good evening and welcome to this edition of The Frontline. My name is Charles Mwangu Shampagi. Electoral reforms and the debate is almost like beginning. The Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs says that proposals have been tabled to Cabinet, have been presented to Cabinet. They will be coming to Parliament later. Some people are asking, isn't it a little too late? Too little, too late. But what exactly is being proposed? That's what we'll be discussing on The Frontline tonight. And I'll be introducing the panelists that I have this evening, starting with the Honorable Ibrahim Semujunganda. He represents the people of Kira municipality in the 11th Parliament. He is a member of a new party trying to get registered, PFF, and he is a frontliner. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you, Charles.
I have with me Dr. Maria Kobrunga Matembe. She doesn't need a lot of introduction because she's a senior citizen. Very nice to have you.
Thank you. Good evening, viewers.
I have from the National Resistance Movement Secretariat, Emmanuel Lumala Dombo, his Director of Communication. Very nice to have you.
Pleasure for me to be here, and good evening, our viewers.
And I have a frontliner, Executive Director at the Uganda Media Center, Ofono Opondo. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening to the audience.
Thank you. It'll be interesting the audience in joining us to share your views and opinions. And of course, we love the debate that you carry on during and after the show on the various social media platforms. Police officer, traffic police officer Hassan Kigenyi, you said you love the show, you watch the show. I have delivered your message to the Honorable Semujunganda and the other frontliners. Thank you for watching the show and for what you do for the country. Let me start with government is talking about presenting proposals for electoral law reform. It's been a demand that's been going on for a long time. We've been asking those questions here and debated on this show for a long time. Let me start with you, Honorable Semu Junganda, and ask, with the calendar already out there for the elections of 2026, reforms now at cabinet level, yet to come to Parliament, the process you have to go through as Parliament to pass them, isn't it a little, too late?
So the assumption is that that little is available. When General Tafire was Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs, he proposed the names to the President of the Constitutional Review Commission. If I recall, I think he had wanted the Honorable Ogalo to head it, either Honorable Ogalo or Honorable Ben Watcher. The President received the names. He did not process them. We kept asking, and I think at one time, Mururi Mukasa, the Honorable, was the acting Minister for for Justice. So that matter of the Constitutional Review Commission eventually died. After the 2011 general elections, we moved around the country. I'm not sure the Honorable Miriam Atem participated in those processes.
Of course, you know, when we came out with that pact,
yes,
compact.
And eventually the compact came to Parliament, was received by late Jacob Olanya, who was the Deputy Speaker. At the time of processing the proposals for administrative and electoral reforms, at that time the Honorable Tashovia, who is now a commissioner in the Electoral Commission, was chairing the Committee on Legal. Government said there was no time to handle them. 2015. They said we can handle them
after the 2016 election.
2016 election. After the 2016 elections, the only proposal that came, the main one, was to remove the term limit. The age limit. And eventually, after that, I think the President himself said there will be a Constitutional Review Commission. He said even him, he had issues he wanted settled. So I've started with that background for the public to appreciate that this is not a new debate. And the Honorable Norbert Mao, his statement is also not a new threat. The debate is not new, and the debate to and the threat to issue the reforms, constitutional, etc., that threat is also not new. I have not seen the content, apart from what I read in the New Vision, that the Honorable Norbert Mao wants term limits to return, that he wants women, especially who are elected on affirmative action, to serve only 2 terms.
That's nonsense.
The other thing I saw in the New Vision was, I think, proportional representation. He and a couple of other issues, and he said he's not sure that they will even go through cabinet. So, but the fact that the Honorable Norbert Mao wants the debate to continue, I want to thank him for that, because this conversation is a conversation that needs to continue. Because at the beginning, we were learning from the past election, and there was a desire to improve the next election. That, I think, eventually we lost. Now we became, all the reforms were reforms, whether legal, administrative, were reforms to help President Museveni continue being the president, from term limits to age limit. And I think after that, he lost the appetite. So when these proposals come, if they ever come, not sure, because in the 10th Parliament, we had a discussion of how the Electoral Commission should be constituted. Should it be appointed by one of the perennial candidates? Should the people be publicly interviewed? Eventually, the only reform they brought to Parliament was change of a name.
That's talked about a lot. I don't think it is anywhere in the law that the Electoral Commission's name changed.
It did, by the
They
way.
only
I was on the committee on
no,
labor. They
one
added
name,
independent.
one word.
We can check the writing of that. I don't know, or are you aware if that was actually changed? My information is that it wasn't.
One word.
That wasn't changed. But the broader question to you, Ofono Pondo, is the question of timing. Elections are timetabled.
Yes.
They will happen in 2026. And at least the Electoral Commission has been strict to ensure that the election is held at the time it is supposed to be held. But if you don't have electoral reforms, looking at the timetable now, is there still enough time to pass any meaningful reforms?
Well, where there's a will, there is a way. Isn't that what you people in English language say? Now, it depends on what the people who want to do electoral reforms are referring to. Do they want administrative electoral reforms? If that's the case, that one you can achieve without much consultations. You can ask political parties to write to the Minister of Justice, Attorney General, and they process that through subcommittees of the ministries, call a few people for consultation and take to cabinet. If cabinet agrees with it, it's easy to done. So it's easy to do. But if you want to touch real fundamental issues which may touch the Constitution of Uganda, in my view, there's no shortcut but to have a Constitutional Review Commission, which, like Honorable Semuju is saying, there's even a contestation. Who should do it? How should the membership? But going by what the NRM and the President Museveni has been doing, I have no doubt in my mind that he would make even that Constitutional Commission as broadly representative as possible. Do we have the time and resources? I don't see it. That in this squeezed budget, we can have another money to go around the country, because which region, which district do you go to and not go to, so that you are not accused of unfairness. So for that one, I don't see it. Honorable Mao, from the interview of the New Vision, I have not, when the government presented the list, the legislative agenda, at the beginning of this session of Parliament, I did not see on that list a proposal for a bill for electoral reform or even a constitutional amendment. So my suspicion is Honorable Mao is speaking his mind. Probably I can see him picking elements of what the Democratic Party, since Semogerere has been speaking about proportional representation, because I suspect DP is aware it cannot gain a lot of parliamentary seats, so they think that by a number of voters who vote for the presidential candidate or the party, maybe if proportional representation is applied, they can get more seats in parliament and local councils. Two, this is not a new argument. This argument was raised by the DP-leaning delegates in the CA, that let us keep the terms of special representatives, like the women, the workers, youth, and so on and so forth. But I think even if you are to do that, you would need a constitutional amendment. Secondly, you are likely to run into legal troubles, because in my layman's position, that would be discriminatory. Because why do you keep for women and you don't keep for the directly elected members of parliament? Wouldn't that be discriminatory? Because members of parliament should enjoy the same status, in my view, and same protection. So for me, I think that would run into trouble. I don't think where we are, we actually need legal constitutional reforms, in my view. I think we need administrative reforms and just good manners of the players. For example, our laws already criminalize, for example, elements of electoral fraud. Do you need another law for that to say, Semujo, don't raise gangs to beat your rivals? Do you need that? You don't need a law. Do you need a law to say, don't fiddle with the ballot papers and ballot boxes? Do you need that? You don't need. So we just need goodwill from all the players. And I think that one we can achieve it through vigorous civic and voter education. And then planning, advanced planning. For example, what he's talking about, even now, the president has talked about it many times, electronic voters register. I want to pick from my party, the NRM. The last time we tried even having a form of voters register, we abandoned it on the morning of voting because there was a dispute. It was not credible. And we went for whoever says it's NRM, come and vote.
You are the government in charge. If you can't have a credible register in the party,
yes,
and you have one for the country.
I am talking about reality. If we have disputes, for example, of people who are in Uganda and they are free to go and register, we even dispute their authenticity on the voters register. How do you then bring in and say, we want to make electoral reform for Ugandans in the diaspora to vote? Do we even know the Ugandans in the diaspora? Do they tell us when they go? Do they inform the system where they have gone? How do you bring in and you say, we want to make a proposal for inmates in prisons to vote? Do we actually have the accurate figures of the inmates?
But what exactly are you saying about government? Because all that is the responsibility of the government in power.
This is what I'm saying. Probably you don't, for now, you don't need legal electoral reforms. What you need is advanced, proactive preparedness, goodwill, and good manners from all the players. And those players include, obviously, the government takes the lead. You need good manners from all the players. And the government is not some abstract thing. The government is you and I, especially the leaders. So, if you are going to have a parliament where where members of parliament are eyeing threats to their constituency, and they go and fiddle with the gerrymandering the constituencies.
Are you being fair to Ugandans when you rope them in? When you rope them in, by that claim, which is a bit outlandish, that government is you and I. There is a government in charge of this country.
Yes, the government is you
and that government in charge of this country must be held accountable for how it governs.
We hold the government accountable through a number of ways. We can hold the government accountable through our elected representatives. And therefore, we put pressure on the Sembujus who are in parliament to hold the executive to do things right. Secondly, if Honorable Sembujus don't do their work, individual citizens can go to petition court.
The responsibility to introduce electoral reform laws has not only been ordered by the highest court in this country, has not only been debated by civil society, has not only been demanded by political actors in the political opposition, but also actors within the ruling party. Why does government at every turn dilly-dally on the question of introducing
we are
those
not dilly-dallying.
reforms?
Let me speak for the president. Let me repeat what the president has said publicly. He has said many times that the legal regime that we have, starting with the Constitution and the laws, have ushered in a framework for free and fair elections, to deliver the true aspirations of the voters in the ballot box. And I guess, I have not talked to him directly on this matter, I guess that's why he has not been over enthusiastic.
He's just been complaining.
Yes,
he's just been complaining.
That rigging by NUP, which is referring to. That rigging the president is referring to by NUP, he's referring to, does not require legal. It does not require a new law. It requires administrative and requires vigilance. That's all it requires.
When NUP complains that they were rigged out of an election they believe they won,
yes,
FDC has complained of the same on the previous elections. The NRM, through its chairman and presidential and now president, Yoweri Museveni, complains. He's written about vote rigging. The other day he complained about 1 million votes, which he believes NUP rigged.
From where the government led by the president stands, the rigging takes place not because there's absence of the law or lacuna in the law. It is because of administrative mischief and lack of vigilance on the part of the various players, including the NRM.
Charles, what the submission by former opponent tells you, it points to a breakdown of government. When this government wanted some reforms and put in place a commission, their own internal commission of Chionga, almost every government agency did some research and made some contribution. The Movement Secretariat. Today, the Honorable Mao says, I have a paper, I am taking it to cabinet. The director says they are not even necessary. He hasn't even seen the document. I don't know which government he speaks for, that a minister has a document and for you not seen it, you don't even know what he's proposing.
I don't speak for the thoughts of a minister that has not come out from cabinet. And I'm saying, you want me to lie that I am privy to Honorable Mao's thoughts, to his document? I am saying I have not. If he pushes it to cabinet, cabinet has a position and is published, I will speak for it.
Honorable
But before
Dombo,
that, I'm sorry, Honorable Semuju, you can see the government is disorganized, but the government that I know works through a mechanism, in this particular case, cabinet. Once we have a cabinet position, then I can speak for it.
Emmanuel Dombo, let me come to you. You sit at the secretariat of the party in power. First is, do you see a need as a political party for these electoral law reforms? Number two is, do you think, from where you sit, there is adequate time to introduce any reforms and actually implement them to function for the 2026 elections?
Thank you very much, Charles. When you read and follow what has been happening in the country, you discover that there have been court decisions that have been made requiring and giving directives that some constitutional reforms be made in regard to the elections. During the consultative process of political parties, when I was still in Parliament, there was an agreement on the basics that could be introduced in Parliament for reforming. But apart from the electoral reforms, there may also be other areas of constitutional reform that may not necessarily be talking about elections that may be necessary. And the president has come up to concur with the population. Because when the president addressed the population during the memorial lecture for Jenuaronda Nyakairima, he concurred that there were some areas of abuse whose modification cannot be made unless the law is reformed. So to me, I think this is something very positive. And if I was in Parliament, I would do, as members of Parliament, would progressively push to ask the member of Parliament, the Minister for Constitutional Affairs, to come and tell us whether this can be attained, and also to require the Speaker of Parliament to discuss the business, because the business in the House is determined by the Business Committee. So, whoever wanted to talk about the constitutional reforms and the electoral reforms, there is concurrence of the mind by the President, because NRM was cheated. And he sees that this is a problem that happened because of the gaps that exist within the technology and the processes of administering elections. And he clearly said that we need to do, that is his proposition. Let us introduce technology, and where technology fails, let us suspend elections. Currently, the law doesn't say so. That is his wish. And he expressed it when he addressed. But in order, even if you wanted to implement the desires of the president, it would require amending the law. So to those who are in Parliament, whose duty it is to discuss and amend the Constitution, they could either pick it up if somebody has delayed as private members' bill, if they can secure support from government by way of certificate of financial implications. If not, they can caucus through the various political parties, and they bring it as proposals from political parties. If the Minister for Constitutional Affairs is not up to the game to bring it quickly. But now, there are two things. Ordinarily, according to the normal working of government, we should have expected that before Honorable Robert Mao came up to make a proposition or a public declaration about what he's thinking about, there should have been a concurrence in cabinet or with the appointing authority. That one I don't know. If Honorable Robert Mao was here, he would have been the best person to tell us whether the ideas that were published in the new vision were his desires, whether it was part of the discussion when he was coming into government, or, like Ofono Opondo says, it is part of the general feeling from the Democratic Party, given the historical perspective that my brother Ofono Opondo has given. In order to get into credible elections and the propositions the president made, I don't think it would require consulting the whole country in order to introduce technology.
I put a question to you specific. You as a party, as a leader in the ruling party, have you had a discussion? Do you think there is adequate time to introduce any reforms? Will they be meaningful?
I think by the time the president said he feels there is adequate time and these laws could be made. But once the propositions have made into the House, there are amendments that you cannot make unless you have done wide consultation of the various players or the various stakeholders in the Constitution. For instance, are you going to just wake up and say there is a term limit for women members of Parliament without consulting? You may require to consult district councils, you may require to consult the civil society, you may require to consult widely, and there may be legal issues also of discrimination, like somebody has already mentioned. So the time is there to introduce some reforms, but the major reforms that will require wider consultation may...
So as a party, you're satisfied with the status quo, are you?
Right now, the party has not had any internal discussions about proposed constitutional reforms.
Dr. Matembe,
because if this was to happen, the Central Executive Committee is the central organ through which these issues would have been processed. Or the Secretariat, through the Secretary General, he hasn't received any such propositions. And for us as a party, we are prepared to talk about the roadmap for the internal processes of NRM, but that one, the reforms, have not yet been a subject for consideration.
Dr. Matembe, let me come to you. What does it mean for the country? You were involved in the Citizens Compact heading into the 2016 elections. That was after the 2011 elections. Most of the proposals made haven't seen light of day. Now you're going into another election. So 3 elections since the Citizens Compact, and no comprehensive electoral law reform process has taken place. What does that mean for democracy for this country?
For me, I have to come here and talk on behalf of the people. Like these people have positions, they speak for positions. Me, I am here to speak for Ugandans all over there. Ugandans, whether they are electoral reforms or not, elections in Uganda are meaningless to Ugandans. Elections in Uganda are meaningless to Ugandans, waste of money, torturing of people, beating and killing people during elections for opposing. So elections are meaningless to Ugandans. And that is how I begin. Now, for electoral reforms, it is not only the compact. You remember 2011, when we went around the country, we were beaten, stripped naked citizens, and the product of our moving around was the organization called Citizens Coalition for Electoral Democracy, CEDU.
That was in 2009.
Yes. And this CEDU came, as the title goes, Citizens Coalition for Electoral Democracy. Our role was to work and ensure that there is free and fair and integrity in electoral processes and that kind of thing. And of course, we worked, and if you don't know, you may have known. Come 2021, the last elections, when all civil society organizations were shut down, we were refused to observe elections. And because Citizens Coalition in Uganda, they are all over the place, they are part of the electorate, they were there not official observing, but they saw all these wrong things that were happening in elections. And when they sent us information and we made a report to Electoral, which we published, we were dissolved. We were banned. CEDU was banned and it is no longer in existence because it saw all those wrong things. Now, it is not the compact only. In fact, even the last, this last petition did not come out. But even with the petition of Mbabazi, with the petition, with the messages, with all those, the court, the Supreme Court, was always telling the government to make those reforms. But those reforms have not taken place because the government is not interested in them. Now, as for Mao coming with the reforms, 2 things. Mao entered into an agreement which we don't know with President Museveni because each of them says their own. He said when he entered, he was supposed to make laws that will bring peaceful transition and, of course, electoral democracy into this country. And after that, when he started talking about actually those beginning to work like that, the president went there on the TV and said, who? Me, agreeing with Mao. I just took him, convinced him like I've been doing with other opposition so that we can work. I mean, how can I agree with Mao? But because Mao, like, is it Dombo who says it, or he has it in his mind that he has got to please Ugandans and show them that he's sticking to his role, which he said he was doing. Now he's coming with it. But in it, for me, what I see in that, the only thing I see there in that reform, And when I see Dombo here saying the president is now agreeable, you know, he has seen rigging. Choka, this president, at times I want to say nonsense, then they say I'm bad. But there are certain things which really angers too much. Because the president overthinks Ugandans are fools. He thinks they don't understand. What about those judgments when they come out at Supreme Court saying irregular and rigging and all that kind of thing? You remember also the elections where, was it by elections, where he also said, yes, there was rigging here. He has already said there is rigging, there is rigging. Eh? But me, if he thinks that we can believe that the whole government, which we saw beating all these new people, arresting them, doing all the evil that they did, and some of the children have never been seen, and he's coming out now telling Ugandans, yes, I have evidence, 1 million votes. How many votes has he been rigging? Even with messages, elections used to read, even to buy them, and all these kind of things. So now, for me, what I want to tell Mao, yes, he wants to please Ugandans, that he has come with what he promised he would do. But secondly, let me tell you, the major reform which is coming out of this reform, and I'm here to prophesy, and the president is now with it, is this thing of, help me, is it parliamentary elections of the president to change the system of presidential elections? At the helmet of this reform which Mao is talking about will come the way the president is going to be elected. They want to do away with the public elections of one man for president and bring the parliamentary, is it called? Parliamentary system of presidential elections. That one, I tell you, that one is to come. And when you say, yes, they rigid, let's do this, that will come. Now, the other one of the machine, really, that's why I say I get so tired with the president who lies people. Is there telling you them lies, and he thinks people don't know that he's lying them. Since I left even politics, by that time actually I left, when I was still a minister for ethics and integrity, this technological, the machines like the ones in Kenya, which, what are you calling them? The electronic voting. I'm 19 years out of this government, 21 actually. 21 out of government and 19 out of parliament. By the time I left, that was the rule that we are going to establish that
biometrics and...
Didn't they, by the way, try the machine? I can't remember. Was it not tried here in this country? Yes, it was.
Electronic voting is a new thing, it's a new proposal.
It came up, it was, somehow down the road. I don't know what happened. But now he's there telling us, then if it doesn't come, then no elections. What did the president tell us? He told us, if COVID has not gone, that was in 2021 elections, he stood up and said, if there is COVID is still here, no, there will be no elections. And he shouted it like that. And me, I said, wait, we shall see. And down the road, what happens? The COVID was there, elections
the Electoral
were
Commission
there.
said it could actually go ahead and organize the election.
But what are you telling me? The president is supreme. They are saying his wish. Is there any wish of the president which doesn't pass through that parliament? When it is a transactional parliament, he can get anything he wants. Now, if you say wish, but let the parliament, what are you talking about? Which parliament can decide anything which President Museveni doesn't want?
Let me take a message.
Tired of being deceived.
Let me take a message from Ambrose Ochan, who has tweeted on X and says, allow me appreciate my role model, Mr. Fono Pondo, for always being genuine and authentic with his explanation. Nicholas Sengova is watching us and says, let me take a message. Yes, Nicholas says, OO contradicts himself when he says that you are discriminating if you cap the terms for woman representatives and not for all other MPs. The women's seat is ring-fenced for only women, and by this argument, by OO's argument, that discriminates against men who are not allowed to contest. Yet women can also contest with men on the direct elected seats. That's a message from Nicholas Sengoba.
By the way, would you allow me to say something on this thing?
Can I allow you to say that after a very short commercial break? We'll pick it up. I'll start with you.
The other one? Okay.
Yes.
NBS Frontline.
You're still watching. Yes, you're still watching the Frontline on NBS TV, and we're discussing electoral reforms. Proposals are apparently before cabinet, as they will make their way to Parliament and then possibly to implementation. And we're asking the question: isn't it too little, too late? Reverend Dr. Grace Lubale from Nakawa in KCCA, thank you for watching the show and always sharing feedback with us. You say you greet the panel and say reforms are necessary for a better democracy and credible elections, like number 1, 2-term limit on the presidency. Number 2, sitting president to stop appointing commissioners to organize elections and judges to adjudicate electoral offenses. 3, votes be counted and declared at polling stations, verbally or in writing, audio recordings and put on the website. Then be declared at constituency level, and districts by the district returning officer. Number 4, the chairperson of the Electoral Commission should declare president using the above results of the district returning officers. Thank you very much. That point is noted, and we will be discussing more about it. Let me also take a message from Muhanguzi Felix, who says he's in Chitagata, Shema. He says, kindly tell Honorable Matembo to observe decorum on the show. Use of words like "that's nonsense" is uncalled for.
I will even say it again.
Says it's uncalled for. Let me come to you. You had a comment on the proposal regarding women representatives. Or said put a cap on it, 2 terms at least.
Well, thank you very much.
That is Mao's proposal, yes.
Thank you very much. That man of Shema, is he from Shema?
Yes, Stagata.
Should leave me alone. When I call a spade, that's my character. So whatever I think is nonsense is nonsense. If it is good, it is good. Anyway, what I wanted to say is, you see, you are talking of these reforms. Like, reform, like what he's proposing, that's why I wanted to come in. Women twice on a seat. These reforms concerning, for instance, the gender balance question are part of the proposals that have been submitted among the proposals that have been submitted for electoral reforms. Actually, constitutional and electoral reforms. Because you cannot come out and deal with like electoral reforms unless they are administrative, as Mao says, without looking at the constitutional amendments. Because first of all, there are certain constitutional amendments that have been proposed that like that man who was listing those things he was listing. All of those.
Dr. Lubale.
Yes, all of those are part of those reforms that have been submitted from parties, from the CEDU, and from the court, all those. So you cannot jump out with the electoral reforms without looking at the constitutional amendments. And on the issue of the constitutional amendments, by the way, I want to say that not every amendment in the Constitution should call for a constitutional review. Countries make constitutions, and these constitutions are amended as and when it need arises. Because when you are implementing and you find challenges that need amendment, you may even just choose who are they, like expert consultants, like when we are making the Constitution of Kenya, just a few consultants. I mean, yes, consultants who are experts, and they came out with the views which they need. They will see against the implementation of the Constitution and what has been disenabling it to work. But what I wanted to say is this on the women. We have submitted several times the proposal that for the sake of gender balance, not only just the women here and there, but why were women put in there, that also the mind of the women should be part of the decision-making of any decisions concerning this nation, because they are also affected by those decisions, and they need to put in their mind. And we put affirmative action at that time at a district level. But that affirmative action has been abused and has become completely counterproductive. So as a result, for us, we've been proposing that even to cut down the expenses, since now in this country, almost every county is a district. We were saying, let us make, if it is a district, all these districts, they become a constituency, and each constituency brings one man,
one woman.
One woman. Because, for instance, if you look at Ushenyi is one county.
Bushenyi district?
Yes.
What remained of it?
But it has 4 members of parliament. Can you imagine? 4. And they are not any useful. But if you go to that county and give it one man, one woman, you will get the views of women, get the views of men, and you will reduce the expenditure on elections, and there will be effective representation if the right category of people are elected. So for Mao now, I don't know where he comes from by doing that, because if he had read, for instance, what the women have been writing and other people to submit proposals, he would have found out that actually the proposal for reform which has been submitted is every constituency, you know, one man, one woman. And if it becomes a district, because all districts are now, like all counties are, like in Nyabshos, the whole of Ankole, every county is a district. So if you say that, and you say one man, one woman, that's it. You will get how many
What's
people?
left of Mbara district is Isinjiro County. No, not Isinjiro.
Mbara district
is Kashari.
Mbara district, what is it? Kashari County is a district.
Yes, is in Mbara district now.
Isinjiri is a district.
Yes.
Bukang is a district. Rwampari is a district. Buhesh is a district. Every county in Ankole now is a district. And I used to have all those counties. I was one member of parliament covering all those counties.
But now Kashari has Kashari North and Kashari South, is it?
No,
right
there is Kashari South, Kashari North, then a district woman representative. So one county now has got what? 3.
Was the city part of that?
No.
The city
used to be part of the district.
Own. The city has 2. Has to also represent 3.
No, 3. A woman,
yes.
A woman, and.
So now there are 6. You can imagine all this nonsense. When I say nonsense, this man quarrels. But let him look at what I'm talking about. Why don't you get one man, one woman? Very good. And the things will work well.
Thank you. Nicholas Sengova and yes, had some feedback for you. And I think Ambrose?
No, Nicholas Sengova writes a peripheral column, and I think he doesn't appreciate many things. I simply said, by our constitution, all members of parliament are supposed to enjoy equal status and protection. And therefore, if you say you want only to keep women or youths to 2 terms by law, you could run, because Ugandans are now litigious. You will not prevent somebody from running to court to say, why are you discriminating against women representatives and not? This simply, that's what I'm saying. That you cannot prevent somebody from going to court. It may be a frivolous case, but once a case goes to court, you can't be sure how it will come out.
Thank you.
So that's simply what I'm saying. But let me just add. Yes, the president is free, like all of us, to cry, to complain that he's being cheated, and to raise his concern. But this country is not run on the whims of the president. This country is run on the basis of the law. Yes, people may manipulate, but the country does not run simply on the wishes of the president. Well, if the president has wishes, he expresses them, he must take to cabinet and stand into policy and law through parliament. That's how the country is run.
Okay.
Thirdly, Honorable Matembe is saying the elections are useless. But Honorable Matembe, in 2020, 2021, Honorable Matembe ran for election for the elders, for the elderly. When did she discover that elections in Uganda are useless? You can say the elections have elements of unfairness, but you cannot say that they are useless. Meaningless. So you were participating in a meaningless exercise? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, if you are you want to shoot at me. Yes, now I'm saying yes. Now
then that speaks volumes about your intent, because you know that something is useless and then you participate in it.
I will explain. Okay. Let me just say something.
Sure, go ahead.
Because let me tell you why I went for this. I was, I'm driven by passion to serve in whatever I do. I kept watching these people, the elderly. They are beaten, old women. I used to watch it on TV. They are chased out of the land. And I used to cry. These people who speaks for them, who fights for them. And when I was there saying that, they said that the elderly, the elders, they have created positions for representation of the elders in parliament. I said, God, you are putting a place there for me to go and shout out on the issues of these elderly. And in my view, I was thinking that, this government, this country of Uganda, it is all our fault who were there. We never considered the issue of the senior citizens in this land. And everybody is standing on the shoulders of those senior citizens who worked for this nation where we are standing on.
Thank you.
Once they grow, don't shut me, let me finish it. Finish. Once they grow old, they are just dumped there. Nobody takes them for treatment. No policies, only this 25,000 shillings. So I thought when I go, with my commitment, with my energy, I will go to parliament and I will convince these parliamentarians prepare for their elderly position so that we put policies, programs and laws that would promote or integrate the senior citizens of this country into the development process of the country. That's what I had wanted to go there and talk. And if I had went to that parliament, I would have talked. I would have talked what I wanted to talk. So I had a purpose to go there and to know that it was meaningless. Do you know the person who is supposed to have defeated me, Matembe? Me, with all my passion, with the former member of parliament, a doctor, the former commissioner, the former CA delegate for an African parliament, a foreign minister, and I go to speak for this elderly, and I'm supposed to have been defeated by a woman who is a community development officer, who studied at SAMZ, who knew nothing, and the NRM powered all the money it wanted to defeat Matembe. Isn't that nonsense? Now,
isn't that how democracy works?
You tell me whether there is anybody here even who knows that woman, who even her name, even who has ever had her speak, who represents
democracy
the elderly.
Tends to work in strange ways.
Who told you in Uganda there is democracy? That's why I'm telling you that the elections are useless because they do not promote democracy in this country. It is about purchase.
Isn't that what Opondo asked you? Why did you participate in a useless process?
I told you why I was going there, and I think God wanted to show me how useless completely, how meaningless they are. And I saw it.
I'll read a message from Andrew Irumba to you in a moment. Mwizuche Francis is watching us. He says, in 2005, the term limits were removed in favor of President Museveni. In 2017, the age limit was removed in favor of Mr. Museveni. After celebrating 80 years, Mr. Museveni can no longer run around the country to campaign and put up a show before he rigs the election in 2026. The amendment to provide for Parliament to elect the president is to help Museveni, who will be in 2026. Electoral changes are always to help him stay in power for life. Honorable Francis Mwizuche, your message is missing something where I didn't skip. That's how you wrote it. Maybe you need to look at it again. Irumba Andrew says, Honorable Matembe should desist from claiming that she's talking on behalf of all Ugandans and she's speaking God's will, because she needs to be in an elective position for her to claim she's speaking on behalf of other people. For now, she's expressing her views, not any others. And it's her right. Lastly,
shut up.
Let me finish the message. Lastly, let me know which phone number I can call God to verify that her claim, that he sent her to speak on his behalf. Does she want to receive God's
Tell him to shut up right now.
He's watching you.
He's speaking nonsense.
Yes, Honorable Semuju.
Part of the proposals, I think the political parties made. One was required the removal of the military from Parliament. We're talking about the women MPs. We have 10 soldiers in Parliament. I keep teasing them because they hardly speak. They were,
and they're supposed to be listening posts.
That's what the president said. By that time, the reason he said so was because he wanted to shut down, I think, Serwanga, Tinyefuza, and maybe Dr. Bessie, the one who is representing the military in CA. So the presence of the military in Parliament also represents the militarism of this government and the role they play in elections. Where I agree with Ofono, there is no law that allows the military to take over electoral exercise. But they do. In the last election, SFC, which was created initially to protect the president and his family, was marauding. They were everywhere. They came to my constituency, removed posters, corrected the public card system. And when you report those matters to police, police was as helpless as us, the candidates. They participated in arresting and including killing. And remember the president saying some of the people who were reported missing are here with me. They were brought by SFC. There is no law that allows SFC to participate in elections or UPDF in general. But they will participate in elections. They will beat people. They will shoot at people.
Let me run through some of the proposals that Honorable Mao is making. One is allow for freedom of association and assembly and speech.
Now, is that disallowed?
No, it's not disallowed, but I think strengthened. Punish public servants. Punish public servants for. Public servants participate in electoral processes, especially those that haven't resigned. Security deployments. Security should be neutral. That's what the law says already. I don't know about enforcement. Tallying should be done automatically from the polling stations, especially if you're using the electronic voting system. And then I think he's proposing well, I think I'm missing a little bit of this. I'll correct it and come back with it to the panel here. But let's go back to the fundamentals and ask, in the circumstances, Ofono Pondo says, yes? Did you want to conclude?
Yeah. So the role of the security agencies in elections, sometimes you don't know that it is police organizing elections or it is the electoral commission. I remember in the 2016, Amama Mbabazi, who had been a prime minister, and he had participated in making the law on public order management. In fact, he wanted me taken to the disciplinary committee for what he thought was misconduct in parliament. Under the law, as it is today, you are allowed 1 year before elections if a presidential candidate to go and consult. The Electoral Commission, conniving with the Kayihura, told him you cannot go. The Honorable Kyagulanyi attempted to do the same thing. He said he wrote to the Electoral Commission and he said the law allows me to go and consult. And they told him, no, you will not go. So the available legal regime can guarantee free and fair and transparent elections. What is taking place actually, the overthrow of the constitution itself and then of the laws as they exist.
Are you therefore suggesting...
And then Mr. Museveni becomes the Electoral Commission.
Are you therefore suggesting that there is no need for electoral law reform?
I mean, when you are sick, a painkiller will be important, but it will not cure you. Mm-hmm. And I don't think these electoral reforms by the Honorable Mao go beyond just providing some relief. Because I have given you cases where the law says aspiring, actually the word is aspiring presidential candidates, 1 year before elections can go and consult. The Electoral Commission with the Kayihura said, no, you cannot go. And Amama Mbabazi gets arrested in Jinja. The Honorable Kyagulanyi gets arrested. The law does not allow the military. I remember one time when we were in Butambara, because the laws, both presidential and parliamentary, don't allow armed men to go near a polling station. But they had brought a pickup and parked in the polling station.
What would be your own proposals, Honorable Semujungande?
It's going to be very difficult that, because I thought we needed a conversation as a country with the involvement of Mr. Museveni on whose behalf, and sometimes him directly, these things are done. Because he must stay in power. And he has said so many times that he cannot be removed by a mere paper. So once you have that mentality going into an election with a person like that, you are...
What are your proposals?
These proposals are not necessarily mine. The whole idea of iPod here was to encourage the actors to take the gun away. Because J. Rawlings was not different from Museveni. He also wanted to stay in power. He had to choose between a country and his own personal ambitions. So the discussion that the Ghanaians went in was a discussion first to put term limits, but also the discussion to agree that first of all, I'm not going to cheat the election, but if I lose, I'll leave. And that's how J. Rawlings supported this deputy who lost, and then he did not seek to overturn the outcome of those results. Mm. So in Uganda, what we need now, either to go through what other countries have gone through, like Sudan, or to get Mr. Museveni to accept that this country will continue even after me. But as long as you have him, because look, his son is serving military officer. Please allow me to make this point.
Before I've asked you a particular question.
Yes.
What proposals are you putting on the table?
That's why I'm giving you Ghana as an example.
Yes.
That you need a conversation with the participation of Museveni to accept, first of all, that I'm going to this election, I may lose and I will hand over power peacefully. But laws will not, they may improve a bit, but they're not going to significantly change the status of elections in Uganda. I have told you, even where they exist, they are not followed. When Tumukunde was on radio and he spoke against the removal of term limit, for 4 years, he was under arrest at the officer's mess. Museveni's son, a serving military officer, campaigns. He's in Masaka, is where he's staging parties. He says, I want change, I'm going to be the president. Nothing is being done. While Tumukunde was charged with the spread of harmful propaganda, his son has gone beyond that. He wants this government to go quickly.
And when all that...
So that's why. So what you're asking me, I don't know which answer to give you. Because except...
But you participate in these elections. You sit in parliament, which is supposed to make these laws.
So And that's where Parliament stops.
Yes.
We have made the law stopping military officers from participating in politics.
I'm speaking
We cannot
specifically
go
in
to
charge
the,
of-
we don't go to enforce the law. Our role is making.
So you think what is available is sufficient, it's only lacking because it's not enforced?
It can be improved, but even if there is no improvement at all, and you get Mr. Museveni to accept that this country is bigger than him and his family, these laws will be enough. But as long as you have Museveni who want to stay in power at all costs, who want to use violence and military, even if you change the law, he will not respect the law because he is not respecting even what exists.
Thank you. Mr. Honorable Dombo, before you bring the electoral reforms, allow political parties to talk to the people without police interference in response to the Constitutional Court's ruling in Human Rights Network versus Attorney General, Acting Attorney General. The Attorney General's appeal in that constitutional case is meaningless and redundant. POMA, which I believe is the Public Order Management Act, is now a toothless bulldog. John Ken Luchamzi, the man, President, Conservative Party. You have a quick response to him, to John Ken Luchamzi, the man?
Unfortunately, he's talking as if the decision to bar people from doing their consultation is taken in Chadondo Plot 10. It isn't. We're also a political party, and at times we have been unfairly tackled by the same police in many situations. At times when you go for the by-elections, I recently saw many members of parliament who have been competing on the NRM ticket have raised the complaints and complained to the Secretary General that the police was harassing them. And there are situations where the police has favored the members of the opposition. Honorable Semujunganda knows that here in Kampala, there are members of the opposition who have direct contact with the DPCs.
Just say there's even one who has just sent him a message thanking him.
Thank the police. So we have had situations where...
He's a fan. He's a traffic police. Yes.
A fan could be a supporter as well. So.
So this one should tell you that there have been situations where members of NRM have raised complaints, and the Secretary General has sought audience with the either Inspector General of Police or members of the cabinet have been defeated. We had the whole Vice President being defeated in the elections.
No, actually true. Professor Bukenya was
defeated
at the primaries.
So when you look at this, when you hear the accusations, and then you see that we are in government, but a sitting vice president loses an election, and he accepts the outcome, somebody would do, when the opposition is talking, it is as if problems are on the ground and nothing is happening.
The president himself, referring to Specials Awandere Kaziwe when he was meeting Ankole MPs, he said, do you think Kaziwe is the vice president? So in your mind, Dombo, you think that Arupo is the vice president?
No, he's referring to the loss by...
Bukenya. Does it matter?
Not Bukenya.
Bukenya, who was saying he wants to be escorted by Nsibambi to go and meet himself.
No,
don't trivialize serious issues. In the by-elections, you know what has happened in Soroti, in Kayunga, in Bukedea. In fact, in Bukedea, Museveni was so ashamed that he said he had never seen that sort of election. In fact, he said the last time he saw it was in UPC. Voting by 8.
But the reference Dombo made was to the former Vice President Edward Sekandi.
Yeah.
Yes, didn't he lose an election?
First of all, I want to...
telling him that Sekandi, maybe in the name he was the Vice President.
Could be on if on SMU, because we have listened to you. I want to tell you that there is room for improvement in the electoral exercises in Uganda. There are situations where the police or the military has unfairly treated the participants, either on the opposition or on the government side, that the enforcement of the law needs to be upped. We have had situations where members of the opposition have complained legitimately, and we have also had situations where the police, even not on issues concerning, we had the Inspector General of Police one time making a declaration on the media, and he said, you policemen, journalists, if you do this, you are going to be clobbered. And I said, but if a policeman hears this and he implements it without the lawful excuse, how will he do the clobbering and then if he breaks the law. But after the elections, the president came out and gave declarations and directives on how certain things should be done. So members are right. There have been areas where the police has abused their authority in the management of the process of elections. And we have all been victims, either members of the National Resistance Movement or the members of the opposition. But these are areas which you require talking about in Parliament. But going ahead on the issue proposed by the president, recently we had the national census, and we had the biometric machines which were used during the census. And I was asking myself the other day when the president made the proposals, said, but making the proposals for the type of technology that must be used, do we have enough resources to buy the technology? If we have the technology, do we have the necessary infrastructure that tomorrow, if the election process begins, the infrastructure will enable us to deliver credible elections? Or the internet may not be enough, or the bandwidth may not be enough to conduct the processes. And where it doesn't exist, what are we to do? To me, I would rather that Parliament begins deliberating on how best, what are the resources required, so that they ask government to provide for the resources in order for us to organize a credible elections, but also pushing the institutions of government and holding them accountable. For instance, I've participated in by-elections where an officer of the Electoral Commission has made mistakes in the process of handling elections. The law holds the Electoral Commission accountable, but nothing holds the officer individually, who may have done it so for individual benefit out of corruption or because he favors a particular candidate. Isn't it high time now we started looking at saying, if you are going to sue the Electoral Commission, we could collectively sue it together with the individual who has either abused his or her office or who failed negligently to conduct what he was supposed to do. These are issues that must be discussed so that we have consensus other than the current bickering and the blame game, which may not be helpful to the process. And in so blame gaming, we are losing time, and at the end of the day, we may have no reforms at all, and the process may have to continue the way we have always done so.
Okay. William Mubiru in Nabingo says, Mr. Semuju and his colleagues have always either deliberately misrepresented the president's words to hoodwink wananchi, or they simply, out of fear, don't understand the old man with the heart. What President Museveni meant by saying a mere piece of paper cannot remove him from power is very simple for a smart person to understand. You see, going for elections is like fighting a war, because at the end of the day, all the participants are fighting for power. What the president therefore meant was that if he can win a war of bullets, how can he be defeated in a war of mere paper? It's as simple as that, not Semuju's version. William Mubiru in Nabingo. I have another message here. Let me say, yes, Tom Bojana, an elder, is saying Article 208 of the Constitution says the army is subordinate to civilian authority and should be non-partisan. Thank you for that information. I have another message. A gift from Nansana. Your message is fairly long. He says, as soon as Mr. Mao was appointed minister, the Honorable Betty Namboze made a prediction that Mao was going to usher us into the Westminster system, and her prediction still stands. Now that Mr. Museveni is coming out to agree with members of the opposition by making allegations that he was cheated by NUP, a case is being made for Mao's constitution amendment, and trust me, we are going in for the Westminster system. On the issue of the district woman member of parliament, for purposes of making sense of the affirmative action, term limits should be instituted if the issue of women emancipation is to make sense in that regard. Can you imagine? The Honorable Rebecca Kadaga has been in the Kamuli District Woman MP since the affirmative action came into play. She should have been empowered enough to contest with men a long time ago. Or let me come back to you. What kind of progressive administrative or legal reforms do you think would guarantee a better election in 2026?
Well, the 1995 Constitution provides for review of affirmative seats for women, for youths, and so on. Maybe I think it is time that we make that review, but it's my considered view that we still need affirmative action, particularly for the women. First of all, they are the majority in the country, but the nature of the political economy of Uganda, the cultural practices, still suppress them, and therefore, in my view, we need to preserve special seats for women. The formula, I tend to agree with Dr. Matembe, that even with 146 districts today, if you were to say every district, regardless of the population, like we do with the Senate in America, let's have, perhaps not two MPs, we can say 3 MPs, one of whom must be
a woman.
Still, you come down to about 368 thereabout, far less than the current 525. So in terms of cost reduction, yes, but we also keep some basic minimum, the number for the population in the country. And we could do that as well, probably for the youth, since they are, and the majority we can do. Now, the other one, really, you said Dr. Ibale or Lubali? Lubali. Already the electoral law actually provides for the declaration of results at the polling station. I think the issue is administrative. If somebody carries declaration paper, results declaration form, is it foolproof that he will not fiddle with it by the time he reaches the district? But also, I think there's now a system where the same declaration form is transmitted electronically to the district, and then eventually, if it is for the president, to the National Tally Center. So I don't believe that the Electoral Commission people at Namboli declare results other than what has come from the polling station. Except, of course, if they are of ill intent, they are bad-mannered, and they fiddle with the actual figures. But the results they declare is something that comes from the polling station. There are many reforms which we can undertake at the constitutional level. There are many reforms we can take at legal level, the laws. And then there are many reforms I think we need, particularly at administrative level, to deal with the obvious abuse. For example, if the law says soldiers shouldn't be involved directly in supervision in manning election points, why should soldiers be there? Okay. That one, you need administrative enforcement by the army itself to ensure that they can account for the whereabouts of their personnel. Secondly, the one of the police, the same thing applies to the police. The incident is referring to in Bukedia of RDC of the police, of a candidate or one group hiring or compromising the police to block a candidate's, one candidate's group so that they can fiddle with the results. Those are administrative, they don't require...
Can electronic voting heal some of those issues?
Yes.
Each of you guys can...
Yes, but you had, in America we have electronic voting, but you had Mr. Trump complaining. So again, it goes back to bad manners.
Thank you. Mr. Dombo, can electronic voting help that?
Absolutely, yes.
Dr. Matembe?
Because even in the NRM, it's something we are considering.
Why are you asking me only that? I want to say something about what
yes.
Because it is my turn.
I need to give you enough time to say...
Okay, so for me, don't talk to me of electronic voting when it is needed, genuinely, and when the government wants really free and fair elections to promote democracy. That electronic voting, I saw it when I was observing elections in Nigeria, in Kenya. It has got, of course, when you have started, it has got its challenges, but it can do a good job. But I want to tell you that here, whether people abuse me or not, I speak the truth and they see it out there. As long as this 80 years old man wants to stay in power, which Ugandans, this intelligent and sensible Ugandans cannot see that really 80 years is too much. And they cannot even, you know, these people who attack Matembe, I listen a lot. I listened to this conversation of President Museveni some time ago. When he was asked, he said, you know, it has been proved even by research that somebody who is 75 years is intellect and what is not enough, you know, to be the president. And then, although some of them can be, and then they asked him, so you don't want now, when you are 75, you don't want to contest to be a president? He said, absolutely, absolutely.
So maybe
and the next, wait, and the next 2 days, remove age limit.
Yes.
So for me, I tell Ugandans who are listening to me, and the other man who was saying, who are you to speak to Ugandans? I mean, for
Andrew.
them, they know I speak for them, and he was asking for the telephone number
Of God.
of God. You go and look at the book Jeremiah 33, verse 3. Go.
What does it say?
Jeremiah
Let him-
33,
that
verse
is
3.
the telephone. Let him go and pick it.
Let's take
and-
a break.
and-
Let's
Hey,
take a break. I'll
but
pick it up from you.
what about this thing
Yes,
I was going to
I'll
say?
pick it up from you in a moment. Let's take the break now.
NBS Frontline.
Welcome back to this edition of The Frontline. Andrew Irumba, your number to God is in Jeremiah 33, verse 3, and it says, "Call unto me, and I will answer thee, and shew thee great and mighty things, which thou knowest not. Call to me, and I will answer you, and will tell you great and hidden things that you have not known. Ask me, and I will tell you remarkable secrets you do not know about things to come." So, please.
So for me, I speak to my God. If you want to speak to him, let him take that number.
I cut you mid-sentence. I need to allow you to conclude your thought.
Okay. Oh, what I was saying, I talk now.
Yes,
They
go
are
ahead.
Still.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. When you cut me off, I wanted to say
Yes.
that actually, like I had started saying when I began, that if the government was committed to democratic governance, to improve electoral process and make sure that our elections would bring in, you know, democratic governance, what they would have done by now is to get those proposals we have been putting there, both constitutional reforms, get them out there. They would have allowed you remember how we've been crying for dialogue. The national dialogue we've been crying for, it would have been held by now. But what Mao is bringing is just to bring the other. In the end, you'll get the other thing which I told you. Because the thing now which I want to raise here, where does the creation of constituency fall? Is it within electoral reforms? Is it within constitutional reforms? I've been so disturbed because when I was a minister, there was clear law and policies on how constituencies should be created.
Do you want to go back a little to when you were commissioner in the constitution-making process?
Don't tell me of this constitution there.
Yes.
The constitution now, by the way, I no longer read the constitution because the constitution I made was murdered and murdered and murdered. So don't take me to that constitution. But what I want to say is that time when we were operating anyway within the constitution before it was murdered, there were clear policy. The Ministry of Local Government had the authority and the right, and they were governing principles of how a constituency is created. And he was the one supposed to say that now, so far, because of this number of people and so on, a constituency is created here. But these days, for instance, I was shocked. I don't know if it is true, forgive me. because many times I don't listen to these things because they inspire me and spark me off. I was told that the president is creating, is it 6 more cities? And I said, can this be true?
Is it the president or these members of parliament?
I told you long ago here that what the president doesn't want doesn't work. What works through parliament is what he wants. So for me,
that true?
For me,
so what do you do in parliament?
That time, that's what was happening.
Yes, for me,
It hasn't changed.
For me, for presidents to create cities in the midst of the cities which were created last time, they are crying up to now. And by the way, I travel around and I see cities. And may I ask, can you see a woman and tell her, from today you are pregnant, and then she's pregnant? Do you create cities by announcing, by announcing by word, this is a city, and by the way, that's what Obote was saying. I have given you senior secondary school. I have given you senior secondary school, and all the schools would be destroyed, and because they have given them when they are not real. Now, for instance, now, in the midst of the inability and failure to finance those cities, you create more cities, and right now, there are no resources in this country, I am telling you. For instance, this UNRWA you see, they said UNRWA is being
rationalized.
What is that?
Return to the Minister of Works.
Return to the Minister of Works. Do you know right now that UNRWA actually is like, it is not existing? Do you know that it has no funds, has no resources? The only resources that are there is the salary for the staff. Apart from that, there is no money there. And now you are saying create cities. You know, now why doesn't that come as the reform also, so that we know about how constituencies should really be created? Number 2, this army, somebody there who was responding to us said army should be impartial. When we created in the Constitution that the army can be represented, I have no time to explain why we said it, but we had all the reasons because we had traversed the country. But when they became, because we were one movement, when we went into multi-party politics, we said the army should not be represented in parliament anymore because it is chosen by government as from one party like this. And therefore, the army is not supposed to be partisan. But they insisted and they refused, and the army is still represented in parliament, which should not be the case. So when you are talking of electoral reforms, you want to clean things, please be meaningful. Don't just come here and kugumaza Ugandans. You know, President Museveni, when he had come, he used to love this word kugumaza. Tubaba gumaza. Na yengo omusajja atugumaziza. Agumaziza abanya-Uganda bonna n'ababika bonna n'abakora bwati. They should not kugumaza Ugandans. If they should go and make comprehensive reforms, but the time is not there for them now. Let them go on with their meaningless elections, and then it will be like that.
I want Dombo to pick it up from then I'll come to Semuju because we're moving towards the closure of this.
Yes. The Constitution has a number of things that require improvement, and not only limiting ourselves to the electoral reforms. I remember when the speaker, the Right Honorable Jacob Bolanya died, we had a very serious scenario where we had to elect the speaker even before the body had been returned because of what the Constitution says. And during the burial, the president said this is a contradiction which is put to us because of the provisions of the law. Because ordinarily we should have, the community expects us to empathize with the family and the people who had elected the speaker. But the Constitution says when the office of the speaker becomes vacant, there will be no other business in parliament other than the election of the speaker first. And therefore, there is no way we could receive the body of the speaker in parliament without. It is something that the president talked about and said, isn't it high time we started thinking of making these propositions? The other reform I would have loved, because of the experience I've been going through. Every time we go for a by-election, you look at the cost to the parties and the cost to the country, the Electoral Commission budget, and every time I look at those resources, I say, isn't it high time we made an amendment that when a party wins an election, it wins it for 5 years. So that if there is a member of parliament who dies midway, then the parties that won that position for the 5 years are the ones responsible to do their internal democracy in order to repress that one. The final one, which I was looking at Tanzania. When President Magufuli died, nobody knew, very few people knew about the vice president. Our constitution says that should the president die, resign, or become incapable, then we shall conduct an election after 6 months. Why don't we say so that when a president wins an election, he wins it for 5 years? And when the vice president is there, he continues like it has happened in Tanzania. These are issues which could be debated because they have their own advantages and disadvantages. But when we limit ourselves to only constitutional reforms, we miss the general good that we should have done in order to improve on the constitution in Uganda and the jurisprudence for the benefit of our country.
A quick one. Among Mao's proposals, you must have seen him when we're starting the show, is to limit money in politics and says possibly maybe extend the time to ban fundraisings.
Banning fundraisings, there has always been an attempt to do that and it benefits everybody. But the problem has become epidemic when you look at the amount of money people use currently in the elections. It is going to affect us because at the time when I contested in 96, I was one of the poorest, perhaps the one who had the least amount of money during the election exercise. But because we have judged through the same candidates meeting, my agenda was appreciated by the voters. Even when I had the least amount of money, it did not prevent the population from voting and electing me. But progressively, the introduction of the excess use of money has really compromised the quality of the people that we get and will prevent us from having good leaders who, because of lack of money, may not be able to sell their agenda. I don't know whether through legislation we can do that. It is something that we can debate, but that proposition by Honorable Mabo is a very good proposition.
Thank you. Ofono Pondo and Semoji will use the last few minutes.
Well, I don't entirely agree with Honorable Dombo. We have had here people with loss of money, they lost election. I don't think the former vice president, second, didn't have a lot of money. He probably didn't use it, could be a miniman. But I don't think that's the reason. If you look at Buganda here, these young people of UNOP, what money did they have? As compared to Ruth Nankabra, to Nabakova, and all these ministers of NRM. So I don't think, but yes, we need to regulate the direct use of money, particularly bribery, direct influence, like you go to churches and so on, and you pay money so that the pastors and reverend fathers speak for you. Also the voters, maybe those. But I agree that there are many things that we need to do, in my view, not for 2026. Those ones should be administrative and just calling on good manners. Each party, political party, to restrain its activists, because that's where some of the problems emerge from, and then state institutions to restrict themselves to what the law allows them to do. I think we can still have a good outcome. And then the other comprehensive things, that now brings what I said, where there's a will, there is a way.
Thank you.
The next government elected, they say the first year we publish constitutional amendments, electoral reforms. And then we debate that the first 3 years of that government and we enact the necessary changes that we need.
Thank you. Wakabi Joseph says he's watching us from Bupadengo in Buzaya County, and he says he supports the electoral reforms proposed by Chairman Mao. Honorable Semujunganda, you have the last word.
I think the interview by the Honorable Robert Mao, interview by the New Vision, has only helped to resurrect the debate. Not significant proposals is making, almost the same proposal that everyone else has made. But the only disappointment is that you have a minister who, instead of presenting bills to Parliament for the reforms, is presenting those bills to New Vision. Maybe in the future he will want to say that for me I did my part, but was failed by these people. Maybe that's the intention. Otherwise, if you are a minister responsible for introducing reforms, why do you just issue threats that I am going now to cabinet? Just bring them. But for me, where I agree with Ofono Pondo, no amount of laws, not even constitutional amendments, are going to significantly change the electoral landscape in Uganda. It has not done so elsewhere. When you have a military man sitting president who appoints his son to head the military and other relatives, and he wants to stay in power at all costs, he will overrun every institution of the state. People who run electoral commission themselves have been told their stories. The Haji Aziz Kasuja and others. The man.
But are you suggesting that everyone else is so powerless, including you at Parliament?
Where do you live?
I don't know. I'm just asking.
If he wants to beat media, he will beat you. If he wants to beat MPs, he will beat them. Didn't he come and beat us in Parliament and we were thrown in buses and taken to Nagarama in prison? I mean, that's the situation. Unfortunately, that's the Ugandan situation.
Our time is out. We need to get out of here. Chakolaga Michael in Kayunga, BMK Gift in Nansana. I've seen Tom in Kivasi and several others of you who sent us messages and those who are debating on X. Thank you very much for participating in the show beyond just watching and listening in, but by giving us feedback and furthering this discussion. I know there are many, many other people who are watching and discussing this show, and appreciate your patronage. Thank you very much to the panel tonight, the Honorable Semu Junganda, Dr. Miria Matembe, the Honorable Emmanuel Lumala Dombo, and Mr. Ofono Opondo. Thank you all very much, and thank you very much to all our viewers for joining us this evening and always, and thank you very much to the production crew that stay up late to deliver the show to you. From me, till next Thursday.
NBS Frontline.